Hey there. Long time no see, huh? So it's been a while since I've actually posted a video with substantive content. And that's not entirely my fault. I don't want to get too much into why I haven't been able to make videos for the past little while. Man, it's been such a long time since I made my initial PC setup video. All the way back in, oh my god, January 2020? Really? Oh man, back then it was just me in a college dorm with some monitors I bought from the college surplus and a PC I built. I was nowhere near the levels of deep I am into content creation and media creation I am right now. And obviously, my setup has reflected that. I have talked about how my setup's updated a little bit in previous videos, but it's nowhere near as comprehensive as just making a dedicated video for it. So let me take you on a tour of the new Powerman PC setup in 2022. I use this setup for both video editing and gaming. Well, the exact ratio, I can't tell you off the top of my head of what I use compared to the other. Just it varies from week to week and how I feel. Gaming has become a much more prominent part of my PC usage because, hey, I have a very powerful graphics card with a display that can pump out high res and a lot of frames. So I might as well play video games on here. So let's talk about the PC driving everything that you see over here. My original PC from the end of 2019, early 2020, basically no longer exists at this point. Between a combination of upgrades and replacements for components that are fried, this thing basically is an entirely different computer. The only thing that they have in common with each other are some storage drives I had previously, with a SATA drive with Windows 10 on it I used on my previous machine, and a couple RAM sticks. This machine is housed in a big, beautiful, fractal meshified 2 case. It has a lot of airflow, it has a lot of room for storage, which was what was limiting me with my previous case. Now, I know it's not in the most thermally optimal spot or anything, being under a desk, but I had no other room. There was no other place to put it. I'm sorry, this room's just small. The camera that's filming this video is not even in the room, it's in the hallway. Going into the machine, we can see that, oh boy, that motherboard is really crowded in. The motherboard connecting all of these components together is this Asus TUF X570 board. And man, I kind of regret getting this board. This board I bought as a replacement for my previous one that has top PCIe slot fry, and it's not the best workstation board. Really, the only positive thing I think for workstation is that it has a lot of SATA ports that you can use. The biggest problem, though, with this motherboard is the chipset fan. Oh my goodness. I've had this motherboard overheat when I did anything GPU intensive, that my computer would shut off, I would wait a couple minutes, turn it back on, check the BIOS, and see that the temperature is really high. So what I ended up having to do was to take the fans from my previous machine, put one at the bottom of the case, and then try to get air to that chipset so that way it just wouldn't cook itself. I mean, it worked. My computer no longer overheats even with my GPU and CPU running at full load. Starting at the top of the board, we have my CPU, or rather my Noctua NHD15 sitting on top of my CPU. Yeah, this is the first upgrade I made to my machine after I had initially built it, because the previous Wraith cooler was noisy. Now, I got this cooler specifically for 2 reasons at the time. Firstly is the noise performance. At idle on my 3700X, this thing was silent. And even under full load, it was not really that loud. And secondly, I presumed a CPU upgrade in my future was going to need more power than the processor I was currently using at the time, which was a Ryzen. And so I knew for whatever CPU I was going to upgrade to, I would want a cooler that could handle a more power-hungry CPU at full load and still be quiet. And that brings me to the CPU under the heatsink, the beastly, monstrous Ryzen 5950X. I got it for about $500 US at Best Buy, just due to them trying to get rid of old stock before Ryzen 7000 comes out. And it was double the performance of my 3700X in the same socket. The nearly 2x speed up is a godsend for things like Handbrake, where you're compressing the video and it takes longer to compress it than the actual runtime of the video. And I might be interested in doing a standalone video specifically on the 5950X and that level of performance and what you can do with it. So if you're even remotely interested in that, please like and subscribe. Right next to the CPU is 64 gigabytes of Corsair DDR4 3200 mega transfers per second RAM. I need 64 gigs because some of my Resolve projects will use 48 gigs of RAM while rendering. Right below my CPU in the M.2 slot is my nice 2 terabyte Sabrent Rocket NVMe. Right below that is my AMD RX 6800 XT GPU, and man, I had to do a lot for this stupid thing. The quick version of that story is that my previous GPU died on me, XFX were dicks, and we're not going to send me a replacement because, lol, GPU shortage, find out for yourself, so they gave me a refund. I just had to go and get a 6800 XT and hope to God I got one for MSRP from AMD's website. And I somehow managed to, during the silicon shortage when GPUs were getting double or triple the MSRP. I will say though, the 6800 XT is not just a replacement for my previous card. It games way better than the Radeon 7 ever did. I'm able to play a decent amount of games at 4K 120 hertz with not really that many visual compromises. And then right below that, you'll see PCIe riser cable plugged into a AverMedia Live Gamer 4K capture card? Oh, okay, hear me out. It's much more accessible, at least to me, to plug in and out HDMIs in those vertical PCIe slots than to try to get under the GPU to do it. This capture card, years after it's come out, is still the best one on the market for consumers. And that's kind of sad, actually. Since I built my PC initially, GPU and CPU power has gone up quite a bit, doubling in some cases for some price points. And yet, capture cards just kind of seem stuck in this weird rut despite HDMI 2.1 now existing. And then at the bottom of the machine, we have a Corsair 850 watt power supply. Now, my previous power supply was 650 watts, but it was one that was previously used by a friend. My thought process was, well, I'm probably gonna upgrade my CPU soon, and my power consumption is probably gonna go up. I want more headroom, and I want something newer, because power supplies generally diminish in their capacity the longer that they're used. All right, enough about the PC. Let's talk about this beautiful workspace right here. This wooden table is entirely custom made. So don't even ask about where you can buy it at like an IKEA or wherever, because you can't. Sitting on top of it are this cheapo Amazon Basics mouse pad. My keyboard's the same. It's the K95 RGB. It has a lot of keys with a lot of custom functions. I made a video about it once. My mouse is now a Logitech MX Master 3. Now at $100 US, it is pretty pricey for a mouse. Primarily for me, it was ergonomic, which helps a lot with video editing, and it has a side scroll wheel, which is very helpful through moving through the timeline. It has a bunch of other advanced features, so USB-C charging, custom profiles, Logitech software I barely touch. I have my little Behringer audio interface over there with my Samson Q2U microphone for recording voiceover. Can't forget about the Sony headphones I've been using since my original build. They're fantastic for video editing. They're great for everything else. I've even plugged it into my TV and it works well. Now this last little bit is not exactly related to my PC, but it's on my desk anyway, so I might as well talk about it. This is my Sony PVM 14M2U. This is probably one of the coolest pieces of tech I own because it is one of the best cathode ray tube displays ever made. And I managed to get it for like $10. I mean, isn't that how the phrase goes? The best time to get into high-end CRTs was prior to My Life in Gaming putting out their video on it in 2016. The second best time is right now. Remember that phrase was about planting trees. So yeah, I play retro games on it from the convenience of my desk. You can see right behind me, I'm using one of my original displays still as a secondary display. It's an NEC monitor I got from a college campus surplus store circa 2018. The best thing about this display is that it is a 16:10 aspect ratio, which is my preferred aspect ratio for computer use. You get a little bit of extra height at the top and bottom so you can fit in your taskbar and a little bit of the top of your program. I also want to shout out the MVP of the setup, my nice Office Max chair that I got 3 years ago. Try and use any other chair for computer use that's not as high quality as this one. Feels painful. I can feel my back act up and I can't concentrate and keep my focus. And finally, for the centerpiece of the whole setup is the LG C10 OLED display. Now, it does seem weird to use a TV as a PC monitor, but this has actually been a semi-popular trend for a couple years now. Now, there's a lot of factors that came together for why the OLED went on my desk. I want to personally thank Joe Biden for signing a check just for me to buy one of these things in early 2021.
I was going to put him...
One was just the big size. This is basically 4 monitors in one, but still has a pretty good pixel density. And so it allowed me to have a full screen of DaVinci Resolve with a massive timeline and 2 monitor-sized previews. The nail in the coffin, though, compared to other PC displays at the time, was just that it was so much better a value. It had gaming performance way better than at the time. It actually had an HDR and 4K 120 Hertz. And it had the OLED technology in it, which allowed the blacks to just look absolutely superb, which was one of my big things and really helped step up my video editing game. Being able to know, hey, is this clipped or not? Okay, it's not entirely black. The nice thing about the C10 for gaming is at the distance I sit away from my computer, this thing can fill up a large amount of your field of view. So you just really feel immersed while playing the game. And that about covers it for my PC setup in current year. To be honest, a lot of the reason I did this video is just to kind of get the rust off personally. The past year has really not been great in terms of my personal video projects. I don't really feel like I accomplished that much in the past year just due to circumstances. And so this video has really been the opportunity for me to just get a little bit of that rust off, right? To get back filming under lights with my camera, get used to speaking and coming up with things off the top of my head and get back into the workflow and so on and so on. So I hope that you enjoyed this video and you found this setup even somewhat interesting to you, and have a good day.